Hello and welcome to The Master's Voice, the podcast series from Mediabrief.com. This is MVP, the Master's Voice podcast, where I speak with some of the MVPs, or to borrow from US sports parlance, the most valuable players from marketing, media, advertising, business management and growth, and much more. MVPs in the business of creating engagements that empower businesses. And my MVP today on this episode is Anuj Kumar, co-founder and Chief Revenue and Operating Officer of Affle. Anuj, welcome to the episode.
Hi, Pavan. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you, Anuj, for giving me your time at the fag end of the working day. It's 8:30, 8:45 p.m. now, India time. So thank you for your time. And thanks also to Pallavi Acharya of Archetype Public Relations for helping make this interaction possible. Anuj Kumar, my listeners, as I said, is co-founder and Chief Revenue and Operating Officer of Affle, which is well known for creating impactful consumer journeys on connected devices. Affle is known for building real connections throughout the consumer's journeys to drive acquisition, engagement, and conversions. But before we begin our conversation and know more about Affle and all that it does, Anuj, allow me to tell my listeners about you. A quick introduction. So, here goes. Anuj Kumar, co-founder and Chief Revenue and Operating Officer at Affle, is a passionate leader who has played a pivotal role in building and growing Affle, which is at present counted amongst the top 300 public listed companies in India. Anuj has helped forge important partnerships integral to the company's business, fortifying Affle's position as a leading mobile technology company. Under Anuj's leadership, Affle has achieved a highly credible customer base, and the team has worked with several top marketers globally to help deliver end-to-end mobile advertising, technology, and data analytics-driven solutions. Anuj has more than 20 years of relevant media and advertising industry experience. Prior to Affle, Anuj worked with large global media companies like ESPN Star Sports, Group M Mindshare, and JWT. Anuj holds a bachelor's degree in economics from St. Stephen's College and a master's in advertising and communication from MICA in India. So Anuj, welcome once again to The Master's Voice, the podcast series on Mediabrief.com.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here.
It's wonderful to have you on the show. So let's start our little chat. Okay, Anuj, tell me first the vision that inspired you to create Affle and what's its journey been so far? You founded a mobile MarTech company in 2005 when iOS and Android plans were yet to be announced. And if I remember correctly, even Nokia had a major Asha and those kind of phones, which today are nowhere. So you would have faced a fair share of, challenges over time. What were they?
But I think it's very, very interesting, the journey and seeing how the mobile industry has evolved over the years. I remember quite well that in 2005, 2006, when Affle was started, this was really pre the smartphone era.
Right.
But clearly, if you remember, at that time, mobile penetration was growing. Obviously, it was nowhere close to what it is right now, but more and more consumers were buying the mobile phone. What was different then is that the mobile telephone was largely used for calling and SMSing and nothing really beyond that. Now, that is where we saw an opportunity because as the founding team, I think we believe that this device, given the way it was, the propensity of consumption of that device was growing and the way the technology was evolving, this device offered the right interface for it to become a content consumption device, which it has thankfully today. And I think that's what drove us to build a company whose core ethos was around mobile advertising and around building a consumer platform which would allow marketers to connect with the most relevant consumers. At that time when we started, the ecosystem was obviously very different because the phones were, as you rightly said, it was the Nokias and Blackberries which ruled. To get any content consumed by the user, we had to work with the mobile carriers like the Airtel and Vodafone and companies like that. And there was no real app store or content or apps which were being consumed. So I think it was an interesting times because what we were doing is still similar to what we do right now. But how it was done was very, very different because the ecosystem was so different. And I think in the last 15 years, thankfully, we have seen the industry change and progress dramatically with the coming of smartphones, with the coming of 3G and then 4G. And I think it's for all of us to see that today this has become the dominant device for us to consume content.
Right.
And this cuts across communities, age, or any other barriers like that. So I think this is the device. And thankfully, I think if I look back, I think we started a bit early, but we started on the right journey. And thankfully, this is where the world is and all the eyeballs are today for us and for all the people who we would know.
And I think it must be very heartening to have kicked far back into the past. The big gateway fees that the mobile carriers would have been levying on you guys to give you access to their end consumers, right? So we'll talk about the biggest challenge that's coming to mobile advertising, which is, that third-party cookies will be phased out. Until the arm twisters, the biggest ones, the ones who are the biggest violators of privacy today, whether it's a Facebook or a Google, with all their incessant tracking, till they actually finally are sort of, browbeaten to say, okay, end the third-party cookies. That's going to come. We'll talk about that in a bit. But I think Affle has delivered remarkably over the years, and only recently, what was really remarkable was your Q2 and Q3 performance, the most recent ones. Please tell me about the performance. You are one of India's top 300 listed companies, if I'm not mistaken. So tell us about that. What drove that performance, and what were some major achievements of Affle in the last 1 year, right?
Yep.
So just give me a nice back of the envelope.
I think the last few years have been super exciting as part of the Affle journey. I think if you look at it 2 years ago when the world got impacted by the pandemic, while obviously the health-related impact was pretty bad on that, but for consumption of internet, of digital services or consumption on mobile, I think that's grown dramatically because any and every kind of service, whether it is shopping, whether it's entertainment, whether it is content consumption, everything is largely happening on the mobile device. I think as a company which has firmly built its business model on connected devices, I think over the last 2 years, I think our focus has been to strengthen our position on it. And I think we've done it a few ways. So I think the key part of our strategy has largely been anchored around what we call the 2V strategy, which is really going vertical specific.
Okay.
Because what we see is that we have customers across various verticals, and there are digitally first verticals where consumers are consuming, where advertising is impactful. So having a very, very verticalized approach, leveraging technologies like vernacularization, because in a market like India, where so many new internet consumers are being born every given day, where they are starting to consume internet, the shoppers of today and the shoppers of tomorrow are the ones who are coming in with vernacular affinity. So having deep vernacularization, hyper-personalization in the kind of advertising we were delivering, together with a verticalized approach of solutions. So today, when we look at our business, we classify our core categories where we do business as EFGH.
Okay.
Which is E stands for e-commerce, entertainment, F is for food tech, fintech, G is for government, grocery, health tech, hospitality, travel. Those are the kind of sectors where the company does bulk of its business. And if you look at it, those are also the kind of sectors which have leapfrogged in consumption in the last year to 2 years in the pandemic. So I think we've been fortunate to be where the industry where we are is growing. Our focus on 2 V's is helping us streamline and ensure that we can deliver consistent solutions. And what is making it even more impactful is that throughout our journey, our focus has been that most companies who are in advertising look at selling advertising as a cost line item. That you buy advertising and it might give you returns, it might not. And even if it might, you are not in the best position to measure that. I think our belief system has always been that advertising becomes scalable when it is measurable and ROI-led.
Absolutely.
And I think that is where we really innovated on the business model, which we call as the CPCU, or the cost per converted user, which is where we would go ahead and charge the advertiser only if we are delivering them the conversion which they are looking for. So unlike traditional advertising companies who are selling real estate, that you buy this media from me, if it makes sense for you, then you will buy more. If it doesn't, you'll stop. But you will still need to pay me for what my space is.
Correct.
In our case, we are not charging for that space. We are saying that we are delivering you ROI, and you pay us only when we deliver the ROI, and that resonates very well with a lot of newer categories of advertisers because that's the kind of language which they want to hear. And thankfully, that refreshing language together with the verticalized approach and the vernacular approach has helped us scale. And I think if you look at whether it's Q2, Q3 or even before that, I think the last few quarters, single-minded focus of staying true to our strategic vision, going after it, category after category, customer after customer, and growing our market share there, I think has helped us grow here. And I think that's where we remain very bullish that the industry where we are is got all the right ingredients to continue to have greater growth rates. And I think as a forward-looking company, we would want to leverage that and ensure that we can create greater growth for ourselves and all our shareholders.
Okay, right. So what was the growth like? Percentage terms, actual terms?
So I think a lot of our numbers in terms of what we have done, I think are already there in public domain as a public company.
Yeah.
So I think we have in Q3 also grown over 100% in terms of revenue size, growing equally in profitability. And I think that has been very, very interesting that we've been able to grow at that level with a high base. And I think that's all largely been anchored on what I described as our core strategy and how we are going about executing that.
Right. A good thing that differentiates you obviously from those who are peddling real estate on advertising or media and saying, just buy and pay whether you get the benefits or not. Forcing people to adopt the spray and pray kind of approach. So that's something that's really not the best at all. And you have given a solution. How do you ensure that there is no wastage and there is no fraud in the kind of advertising that happens in terms of consumers, in terms of bots, in terms of clicks, etc.?
Yeah, that's a very relevant question, Pavan. I think this is a key challenge which exists in our industry, that any industry which is growing, while there is good innovation which is happening, there are also bad actors which come into it, and fraud is clearly a sign of that.
Sure.
I think for us as a business model, eradicating fraud becomes very, very important because unlike a company which is selling impressions and clicks, where the impressions and clicks could come in from a bot and they will still get paid for it, for us the business model is we are selling a conversion. So if our impressions are being seen by a bot, conversions would never happen. And that makes it highly unprofitable. And as part of our core business model, that propels us to innovate more there. So I think it's been almost around 5 years since we launched our ad fraud detection platform, MFAS, which is a very, very leading platform for which we have many patents which have been granted in jurisdictions like the US, a lot of awards which we have won in the industry.
Right.
And that helps us remove instances of fraud, figure out what is human-led consumption versus machine-led consumption. And that helps us optimize towards delivering conversions, because in a business model like ours, if we don't do that well, we bleed and the advertiser doesn't get the ROI, and that's...
it's a downward spiral throughout after that. Yes, it's completely a downward spiral.
Yeah, for us, it's not an option. It's a compulsion to do that well, because that's what our business model is anchored on.
Absolutely. How about ad blockers? How do you overcome those?
So ad blockers, I've seen that it's not like, if you look at the percentage prevalence, it's not something which is as far widespread. I think that's one. So I think there are very few consumers who are using ad blockers in markets. And
yes, I'm not. Yeah.
And most of the advertising which we do is in-app, which is not the spam or push advertising. And we haven't really faced any challenge with ad blockers really.
Right.
It was perceived to be much bigger versus what it has landed after a few years of being around.
Okay. I've heard about the Affle 2.0 strategy.
Yeah.
What is Affle delivering? How is it delivering on end-to-end needs of the marketer basis this approach?
So I think the key part of the 2.0 strategy is how we have defined our strategy for the decade ahead, which is the decade which we are there, 2020 to 2030. And what our belief systems is that this is the decade which will be the decade where connected devices penetration will grow significantly. Because if you look at it today, even today, only around 50% of the world is connected to the internet.
Okay.
And then within that world, there are so many multiple devices where we are connecting on the internet. So our belief as part of our 2.0 strategy is that we want to connect and engage with 10 billion devices by the time we end this decade, which is actually larger than the population of the world. But we believe that that is happening because each consumer is using multiple devices to connect to the internet. So be it your phone, be it your PC, be it your connected TV, or be it your Alexa or any other voice controlled devices which you're using. It's pretty much the entire IoT space is going to evolve and grow rapidly. And our strategy is anchored around connecting 10 billion devices and ensuring that we can provide a seamless experience across devices, because all of us are multi-device individuals, and
Absolutely.
how you can seamlessly have content and advertising permeate within my digital being is where Affle is focused on. And our strategies of focusing on vernacularization, working with OEMs, etc., to ensure that our technology is seeded with more devices, I think is a way which will help us get to this strategy and ensure that we have a great decade, which we have already started in the first 2 years of it.
In fact, you preempted and went into my entire next question. So I already have the answer, but I will state the question for the record, which was like, I was thinking of asking how important is cross-screen advertising to stand out in a crowded app world, especially in a market like India. Do you want to give me some insights on India and how you plan to go about this? Because people have their journeys across devices, and today the journeys are not too far spread out. There's a kid who's looking at some homework, watching the TV, looking at his or her phone and chatting and doing so many things. And they're all kind of constricted in a very narrow time slot.
Yep.
So what is your strategy, or how do you approach a market like India with your cross-screen advertising?
So I think cross-screen is a phenomena which is impacting the world, because all of us have become multi-screeners. We are like, you are on this podcast, but you might be seeing a message on your phone, and we have all kind of become multi-screeners and learn to live with it. And I think that is where the consumer journey has to be integrated.
Right.
And that is where our data platforms focus, that how is it that we can, for a particular user, how do we ensure that there is an omni-channel experience which he's having.
Right.
And I think if we do that well, we can ensure that the advertising itself is enjoyed by the consumer versus being seen as a clutter, and we can have maximum impact with minimum number of impressions.
Right.
Because that is what effective advertising is about. You don't need to bombard somebody with hundreds of messages. If you've got the right messaging delivered in the right context to the most relevant user, it is likely to create conversion. And if it doesn't in an X number of interactions, then it might never do, because you're doing something wrong in messaging or the targeting.
Right.
So I think that multi-screening is a reality, and I think in India also we are seeing that. I think the kind of growth we are seeing for even things like connected TV, which at least a year and a half ago was still even today it's in a stage of infancy. But the kind of growth we are seeing, that how as consumers we have moved from traditional linear TV to actually streaming content on our smart TVs with cheaper devices, dongles, etc. I think that's a dramatic change which is happening in India.
Right.
And with the content ecosystem creating such compelling content, which is allowing us to watch content of choice on demand on devices which are leisure devices like connected TV.
Right. Okay, let's talk about third-party cookies that I referred to right in the beginning.
Affle would not be affected at all. Our business is largely in-app. So almost 90% plus of our business is in-app. Third-party cookies are a browser phenomena.
Right.
So we are not really looking, because on the mobile or the connected TV environment, most content consumption is happening in-app.
Which tells me that you are never going to consider moving on or adding the browser-based kind of services.
No, I would never say never. I think wherever the consumer is, we would want to integrate.
Okay.
And technology itself could be different for each form factor. And I think as we've got the right understanding to ensure that we are getting into that. Like we recently won a patent on voice-based, gesture-based advertising, which is happening during podcasts.
Yeah.
And this is a new patent which has been awarded to Affle. And I think it's really around how consumers are engaging with content, because if tomorrow they are consuming more podcast or audio content, how is advertising becoming measurable in those kind of engagements?
Okay.
And I think that's the kind of futuristic scenarios we are working on, because we believe that the world is gravitating in those directions much faster than what many of us are realizing.
Wonderful. So Affle is not going to be affected by third-party cookies being phased out. What's your take on consumers' data privacy and how it's been sort of respected or perhaps not by entities And what would you recommend the way forward on this aspect of consumer interactivity or engagement?
I think a very relevant question, Pavan. I think privacy as a concept, I think, is a very integral concept towards making this industry larger and more responsible. If I look at it from an Affle lens, I think we have always believed that this is the most important part, because if you do well on this, you build consumer trust.
Right.
And once you build consumer trust, more customers come into a platform like yours. I think an interesting anecdote, the first patent which Affle filed, which was way back in 2005, was on building consumer acceptable advertising. That's the title of the patent which is now granted.
Wow.
And that was the starting thought process for us, because our belief was, and this is what you need to juxtapose it with the time when we launched.
Tell me more about this.
So this was a time when we were all using feature phones. And at that time, in the feature phone era, even when I used to tell my friends and family that I was trying to do something around mobile advertising, people believed that mobile advertising was that spam SMS which we used to see, which we still see, but see it lesser than what we used to see then. And our belief was that is not mobile advertising for us. But people believed that because that's the only format of advertising they had seen till that time. And we said, you know what, we are so anti this model that the company is being born with the first patent on consumer acceptable advertising, which is completely privacy centric and something which is like, even for our advertising platform, we call it the consumer platform.
Wow.
There is a reason for it.
Okay.
Because for us, the most important thing is to safeguard the interest of the consumer. You do that well, business, revenues, everything will grow. If you don't do that well, you might see growth, but you might also see greater challenges, which today many companies are seeing with the kind of changes which have happened in the regulatory environment, be it self-imposed by the operating systems or be it government-led, like what we have seen in GDPR, what we are seeing in India right now. There are many such, and I think we have, like, every time these changes have happened where the industry has been forced to think in a privacy-safe world, I think we have seen our best days, because we've always been doing that. And that makes us, like, even these kind of changes, we are very happy because it's the need of the hour, because sometimes the industry gets a bad name because of a few bad actors. And it's important to clean that and ensure that this is well regulated.
Excellent. So Anuj, you guys virtually created the category of mobile advertising in India way back, 2005. So, it's so long back. And when, like you said, everybody thought mobile advertising means ye spam SMS wala kam, like you said. But so through these years, you started with a wonderful thing which you just mentioned, the privacy-driven patent that you got. What were the other important innovations in advertising, whether it was format, whether it was, time of day related or habit related or target of one related? What were the 1, 2 or 3 or whatever number of innovations in advertising and the way you used to do it on mobile that gave your clients some of the best ROI and which have been very close to your heart?
Actually, one of the key parts of all our innovation has largely been to convert advertising into recommendations. Because if you look at it today, if you think of advertising, we all think of advertising in a broadcast way where we were not targeted and we saw all ads which were not even related to me. And when ads were unrelated, people found ads, like they wanted to avoid ads.
Right.
So how do you skip an ad? And that's the kind of natural way in which our humans have attuned to advertising. We take it as a necessary evil at times. I think our model always was, and I think which has created big success for us, is that if we can leverage data well, if we can leverage data to the point of hyper personalization of advertising experiences, we can convert an ad into a recommendation. To give you an example, if say suppose you're using X number of apps on the phone and there is the kind of content which you're consuming, and if I can recommend you that based on what your interests have been, we believe this app might be of value to you.
Okay.
You are much more likely to engage with that. Like, while it is an advertising message, but you see it as content for you because it is adding value to your life.
Like native.
Yeah. So it's natively delivered and powered with data to make it hyper relevant to you.
Excellent.
So I think that has been the core philosophy, and I think all the innovations are around converting ads into recommendations. We train our teams to think that way, that any innovation you're creating, think of it that are you as a consumer going to enjoy it?
Right.
If that answer is yes, then that is a scalable idea, build on it. if it is that, okay, you as a consumer might find it intrusive, then shell the idea there itself, because this is not an idea. It will create some fast buck, but it won't create sustainable growth for the company. And I think that is where, for us, building sustainability, ensuring that we are innovating sustainable growth quarter on quarter, year on year, I think that is the path which we have chosen for ourselves.
And it's built upon acceptance, continued acceptance and respect for
Yep.
you as, a source of messages, perhaps.
Yeah, completely. I think because the consumer is who we are communicating with.
Correct.
And if you respect him, then he respects the message you send out to him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very well said. So, what are some of the trends in digital marketing, that have come in the last 2 years? In fact, sometime back, Hootsuite went out with a major survey to about 3,200 marketers who use their pretty expensive platform, which is really amazing in delivering results also. And they asked digital marketers what were their 5 most important trends. And this was I think around end of 2019, if I'm not mistaken. And the first thing that they said was about 48% of my digital marketing budgets are going on dark social on mobile. So, WhatsApp and, Messenger, Telegram, whatever. So I'm just saying, what are the trends, the most important trends in the last 2 years, which in the digital marketing space have come up and which you think are here to stay?
So I think one is the first trend, which I would say what I would call as programmatic everything. So if you see today that most digital advertising which is bought and sold is being done programmatically, which is on real-time bid-based auctions.
Right.
Now, that's largely happening for mobile advertising or PC-based advertising.
Okay.
I think what I'm foreseeing in the months and years to come is that today your traditional channels of content consumption, TV itself, I think it's just a matter of time when TV is going to be replaced by connected TV.
Right.
Similarly, out-of-home advertising is becoming digital out-of-home advertising. So very, very traditional formats of content and ad delivery are being digitized.
Right.
What that creates an opportunity is that all of that will be programmatically delivered and transacted upon. It's a major, because programmatic is not just a buying and selling technology, but it allows you to hyper-personalize. Because unlike a broadcast media where you have the same ad being seen by everybody who switched on the telecast, now you can have hyper-personalization at a one-on-one level. So I think programmatic everything, I feel, is a significant trend which we are already in the midst of. And in the months and years to come, I think it will take over how digital advertising is happening across channels.
Wonderful. That's a great insight, really, because it is really the shape of things to come. And absolutely, this hyper-connected world, it's all going to converge, actually.
So I think the programmatic everything, I think, will be a key trend. I also see the entire omni-channel experience. Because today, if you look at it, your lines between the physical and digital persona for you are blurry. Take very simple examples. You walk into a mall, and before you're shopping, you're checking Amazon and seeing if you can get a better deal there or if you've got better collection there.
Correct.
So you've walked into a physical space and you are on your digital device. Maybe you'll convert your shopping digitally and not physically.
Correct.
Similarly, when you are on digital, you're possibly going to a physical store, checking out the product and buying it digitally.
Yeah.
So I think the lines between what you're doing physically and digitally are blending and merging. How you can layer offline context of my location of where I go together with my online behavior and create hyper-personalized experiences, I think will be a key area where winning solutions and companies would be on. So how do you unify that? And I think we're doing a lot of work right now on using context of location together with context of online footprint to create personas of users. And I think that's a very, very interesting space which I see evolving. And then the parts which I mentioned earlier, which was around multi-screening audiences. How do you unify the consumer journey across my own experience, which is cut across so many devices?
Correct.
And I think these are all interesting. Programmatic is a way which will hyper-personalize. Online, offline, merging in omni-channel journeys will ensure that consumers, you can have a unified view of the consumers and build engagements and transactions with them. So I think interesting times we are living in, and I'm sure there are so many more trends which are shaping the industry, but these are some top of mind ones which I think will be very, very important for India and for digital advertising in general across the world.
Any really new age, truly new age stuff that you have deployed recently?
So I think one of the things which we launched recently for one of our platforms, Media Smart, was around creating, like if you look at connected TV, I spoke about it earlier. Like first, what is connected TV? Connected TV is largely when you are watching streaming content on your TV.
Right.
Which could be on your smart TV or through a Fire Stick dongle or Google Chromecast or any other device. Now, when you deliver ads on connected TV, the ad looks like a TV experience, that it's a full video ad. But nobody as a consumer sits on a connected TV with a remote to start clicking on ads. That's not the native behavior of humans.
Correct.
So what we did was we created a way that we could deliver an ad on connected TV, and based on the household where the ad has been exposed, have repeat ads being delivered on the mobile device. So what you now had is that on mobile, now you've seen the ad, but on the connected TV, you were not expected to interact. So suppose there is the ad for an online shopping app. Now you know it's a sale, but on the connected TV, you won't click with your remote and start going out and shopping. After you have finished your content, you go onto your mobile phone and you see another ad which is then clickable. You can go to that mobile app and buy a product which was being advertised or experience what's the catalog on the sale. And you can make connected TV advertising much more measurable because you can sync the experience of TV with your mobile device.
Absolutely.
I think this is a revolutionary technology innovation which we launched a few months ago. I think we've already got so many brands who are leveraging that, utilizing that for their campaigns and making effective connections across devices.
Excellent. Do you want to name some of those brands, those forward-thinking brands?
I think many of them, I can name a few who have obviously consented and with whom we have published case studies. I think one of the interesting case studies we did was with this company Discovery Plus. So Discovery Plus is the app from Discovery Channel. Where they wanted, their key point is that they wanted to connect with the upwardly mobile, the kind of people who are on connected TV.
Correct.
But to engage with their content, people had to download their app on the phone. So how we could build a seamless experience from connected TV to the phone, which is driving ROI and consumption for them on the mobile device because their product is to be consumed on the mobile. So I think it was very interesting. So we did that in India. We've done something with Burberry right now, which we just released in the Middle East markets, which is again something similar. So different categories, whether it is FMCGs, digitally first companies, I think we've seen across categories because that is where advertising dollars follow where consumer eyeballs are.
Absolutely.
Consumer eyeballs have moved there and advertising dollars are following. We are just ensuring that those advertising dollars come there not just for innovation or PR. They come there for sustainable value creation, which is what we deliver through the innovations like household sync.
Absolutely. So these are all consumption and behavior context related deliveries.
Yes.
Excellent. Trust somebody who's been with Group M and the other kind of experience getting into digital and then actually saying, yes, now let's get the customers. And with behavior of communication and message delivery, which is acceptable, which is not something that people sort of brace against, So really nice. Since the entire value delivery that you do, the entire, as I mentioned initially, creating impactful consumer journeys on connected devices, it's all based on acceptance. It's all based on really willing engagements and therefore conversions, which is nice. Great. So actually you cracked the most important thing out here and you've been sustaining it for a very long time. So more strength to you. As a suffix perhaps or as a tail ad, do you want to tell me a little about metaverse, which is another trendy term these days? Is it going to become a value addition to the ad tech sector?
So I think, as I said, I think it's an interesting area where there is a lot of innovation and a lot of money which is being spent by so many companies out there. Now, how it becomes larger, how many consumers take up to it, I think time will tell and we'll be watchers and builders on that. Sure. But I think the firm belief is that wherever the eyeballs are, advertising would follow. And if consumers are spending more time on metaverse, and I think a starting point of that is today how much time consumers spend on gaming. Because gaming consumers are the ones, in my view, who will be the first to move into metaverse because that's the kind of virtual experiences which gaming is allowing them to experience.
Absolutely.
And as and when that happens, I think advertising itself will need to evolve because just a simple thing. Today, you are putting hoardings in a physical space to educate people about your brand. Tomorrow, you would do that within the metaverse, but it won't be a bland hoarding. It will be an experience which somebody can have with your brand out there.
Correct.
So I think the first part is consumers adapting to it. Today, I obviously keep reading some brands have already started to do some things on the metaverse. I think these are just early tests of that. I think the real scale will come in with consumers, and I think with the kind of investments the industry is making, there is reason to believe that this should have greater consumer adoption. But I think let time come. I think sometimes some innovations take a little longer to adapt and get mass acceptance. And thankfully in India, what the advantage we have is that we have an advantage that we have a large mass of population. But usually we would not be the first movers on technology trends.
Okay.
So companies which are anchored in India or developing markets have some time because the kind of things which are happening in the US or in the Silicon Valley are possibly, or maybe even markets like China and Japan now, are happening first, and then the other developing markets are taking over. And that's largely whether you look at the app ecosystem, smartphones, like voice-based navigation. It's happened across various trends. So I think we're obviously continuously watching, trying to build experiences around that, and hopefully in the next few years we'll see how scalable it grows. I think if it grows, then it makes it easier for us to, as part of the 10 billion connected devices journey, because there are so many more devices and experiences where you can engage consumers on.
Right. So as of this morning or last week or whatever, how many smartphones is the educated guesstimate or number there are in India, and how many people are using them? Do you know?
So I think there are multiple reports on that, but based on what we see, a market like India would usually, I think, would be around 600 million, 600 to 650 million smartphones.
Right.
But the challenge today is, which most marketers face, is that not all smartphone users are shopping and buying on the smartphone.
Okay.
The actual buyers who are actually transacting on the smartphone are around 150 million. And that's where the opportunity comes in for all companies, whether it's food tech companies, fintech companies, e-commerce companies, travel tech companies, where the rest of the 650 number itself will grow, because clearly the price points and what's happening in the industry will only make it easier for everybody to upgrade to a smartphone. And then the second part will be that how do we get the smartphone users moving from just purely watching it for entertainment, consuming short form video, to actually buying and transacting on the mobile phone. So I think there is a large way to go in a market of the size of India. If there is only around 100, 150 million shoppers, it's like just you've just scratched the surface. There is so much more to go in and grow as a company and as a category.
Absolutely. So what is the strength of Affle today in terms of, your teams and presence in India, etc.?
So we are, as a company, I think logically, nowadays counting cities is difficult, because in the pandemic we've all hired in different cities. People are working from different locations, so I won't even have a count of that.
Okay.
But I think from an India lens, I think we've always had three clear areas of operation. Gurgaon is our main headquarters where most of our central teams sit. Bangalore is where a lot of our tech innovation is happening, and also some business roles are being played there. And Mumbai is a small sales office. I think today for the company, I may not be, like, I would say that we would be approximately 350 odd people in India, but somewhere around that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. And you've grown your count during the pandemic.
Yeah, thankfully, I think business has been growing, which needed us to add to people. But I think our business is a very scalable platform business. So if you look at it, our headcount hasn't as dramatically grown as our revenues might have.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what a platform business has an advantage of. Because once you have a platform which is delivering value, the same number of people can create multi-X revenue growth without adding there, because it's not an IT services kind of a business where revenue is equal to headcount.
Correct. Okay. Quick tip for young professionals in digital marketing, stroke marketing, which is now actually both are holistically sort of interwoven. But what one area would you tell every young marketer to really either learn up on, get more kind of a certification or whatever? Because going ahead, I think that degrees, while they will remain important, what will be more important is what kind of certificates or certifications have you got, and what additions have you made your learning slate. So what is the one area in digital marketing or whatever you want to speak about that young professionals should actually start informing themselves about, perhaps learning in an organized way and getting certified also for?
I think the interesting thing is that technologies around us are changing way faster than what we think.
Right.
And I feel that whether it's in digital advertising or any other format of marketing, I think certain core principles remain the same. What I would call is observe, explore and inquire.
Okay.
Observe, because see around what's happening, because sometimes all of us look at the world from our lens. And I think if I look at my own lens today, that my own consumption is very different from what my son is doing, the mobile phone. And I see him as more representative of what times are to come versus my own consumption.
Right.
So observe what's happening around you, inquire when you don't understand, and that inquiry doesn't need to come in from a professor. It's best done from your child or from your niece or your nephew, or people who are representing genre of population which is the large part of India which you might not be representing.
Right.
So observe, inquire and experience, because I think that experience is also very important. And I think today if I see that, and I try hard for it, and I know there are many times I might fail. On my own device, I would have hundreds of apps. I'm trying to experience what's happening, what consumers are doing, questioning people, talking to our teams, because many of our team members are in their 20s, which sadly I'm not now. And that gives you a view and a pulse of where consumer interests are.
Okay.
And I think if you keep doing that well, then you can make your job very difficult, that I need to understand every technology. I think as a marketer, understand human behavior. That's your strength. And then get the right people who understand technology, and they will help you navigate this journey of leveraging the human behavior with technology.
Wonderful. That's so well said. Anuj, anything else that I should be asking you or you'd like to add here? Because I think I've had a very insightful conversation, and I'm sure everybody who listens to the Master's Voice and Mediabrief.com will also definitely agree with me on that. Anything else?
I think, and it's been fun, reading the kind of content you're putting out as Mediabrief. I think you're in an interesting space. The industry you are representing is growing so fast. And I think it's fun to be in your shoes, because you need to always track the industry and make sure that practitioners of the industry read first on your platform. So wish you all the best. I'm sure Mediabrief should go with greater heights now.
Thank you very much. Your presence will definitely act like the magnet for people to first come to us. But yes, you'll be happy to know that this podcast series actually, and even your episode obviously, is going to be and is available to more than 97% of people globally who are interested in search for or listen to podcasts anywhere in India or worldwide. And as you know, it's only the three major directories, which is in that order when you look at India: Spotify, Google Podcasts and Apple Podcasts, that deliver more than 95% of the audiences worldwide. The rest are all small change, but very, very important, because they do have beautiful ways of presenting stuff. So yeah, it's going to be really very interesting, and I'm going to enjoy putting it out to everybody. Well, thank you very much, Anuj, for giving me your time today. And thank you also once again to Pallavi Acharya of Archetype Public Relations for helping make this interaction possible.
Thanks, Pavan. Great being here. Wish you guys all the best.
Thank you, Anuj. Anuj Kumar, co-founder and Chief Revenue Officer and Chief Operating Officer at Affle, was my distinguished guest on this episode of The Master's Voice on Mediabrief.com. I enjoyed the conversation, found it extremely insightful, and I'm sure every marketer, every digital marketer, all the youngsters, even students, and of course, Anuj's peers and professionals will have taken away a lot of insights from this. It's going to be very useful for all of us. Till we meet again in the next episode of MVP, The Master's Voice on Mediabrief.com, this is your host and friend Pavan Chawla saying, take care, stay safe, bye-bye.